This is video number 53 in the playlist for 3D Experience CATIA Generative Shape Design Application. Uh, the particular item that I want to talk about is splines. And remember, splines also appear in the sketcher, but this is spline in space. Uh, Before I go any further, this subject is very close to my heart because my PhD supervisor, Harold J. Alberg, that you see in this photo, and there's me, was one of the pioneers of spline theory in modern mathematics. And at the time that he wrote this book with Nielsen and Walt, he was a principal mathematician at Pratt and Whitney United Aircraft Technologies. Okay, and he has passed away back in the late 80s or early 90s. Anyway, there he is. Now, when you go to generative shape design, uh, you look at the ribbon at the bottom of the screen, looks like that, and you select the wireframe tab. In this pull-up menu, there is the icon splines. Okay, and when you click on it, this dialog box opens up, and you have to fill it out. And we're going to do that in the context of several examples. The stuff that I'm following, the CATIA V5 version of it, was done by this YouTuber, Mr. Lawden, and I'm repeating essentially his steps by using 3D Experience CATIA. Okay, so let's go ahead. Now, first, we're going to do this thing in space, a spline that is strictly in space. So I'm going to create some points in space, random points. But before I do that, I also want to create two lines that you may wonder, why am I doing this? You'll see it in a minute. So let me draw a line like that. Exit, and just happen to be in the same vertical plane YZ. I'll draw another line, maybe like so, and exit. So I have two lines that just happen to be in the same plane. They didn't have to be. Now I'm going to create several points, maybe 4 points in space. The easiest way for me to do it randomly is on planes. So one like that. Here's one. Another one on this plane. No particular dimensions are not important here. Another one maybe on that plane. And one more. Also on this plane. Okay. And cancel. So what I have here is some random points in space and those two lines. Okay. Let me go. I don't need these planes, so I'm going to hide them. These planes I'm going to hide. Okay. That's these two. These sketches also I'm going to hide. Okay. So now we're going to go to Spline. This table opens up. And let's say that I want to select my points. And this is, notice that there's nothing in here. The points, this is going to be maybe the first one. Then another point, maybe that one. Notice that a line was drawn. Now this one. And finally that one. So basically I have selected 4 points in space. And if I want to close this thing, I can actually do it. Close, and it's going to close it so that overall it's a smooth curve. Now, let's say that I changed my mind and I said that, oh, wait a minute, as my first point, I didn't want to take this. I wanted to take that point. So let me, first of all, not make it close. So what I want to do is I want to take this as my first point instead of that. So I want to select this before I select that guy. So let me go ahead and select point number 1. And over here, it says add, you see that? See, it says add a line before what you selected right there. And I can select this point. All right. And by the same token, let's say that I wanted to add this as my last point. For example, I can select this last one, and I say add something after that, and I select this. Suppose I decided that I want this to be tangent to that. So what I'm going to do is on the first one, instead of explicit, I'm saying from curve. It says which curve? Say that curve. Look at what happens to that tangent. Ooh, look, it became like that. Incidentally, I can flip this. It looks like this. I don't want it like so. Okay. And let's say I want this to be tangent to that. So I select this last point, which was over here. And instead of explicit saying from a curve and preview, where is the curve? There's the curve. And notice that it is tangent, but I want to flip that so it looks like this. This is a curve in space, right? And I drew these two lines so that I can tell you what can be done with them if needed. Now, let's say that I decided that I don't want this point. So this was point number 3. So I'm going to select point number 3 and I say remove it. You can remove it from here, or you can probably click on over there. Yeah, it's gone. All right. Let's say I wanted to add this after that point, after point number 3. So I go to point number 3, and I say after that, select this point, and it's going to look like this. All right. So that's what splines are. Now I'm going to repeat this thing where the points are not arbitrarily in space, but they happen to be maybe in a surface or something like that. All right, so let me delete all of this stuff. I don't need it. I don't need these. I'm going to delete them. Okay. So let me go to a vertical plane, this one, and draw on it is a curve that I'm going to extrude. Okay, so let me go ahead and, for example, sketch on it. A curve. It could be a line, but I'm going to do it as an arc. Maybe I don't want to do it as a spline because I don't want you to get confused about what I'm doing. So 3-point arc, maybe 1, 2, 3. Okay, this is an arc. And then I'm going to extrude it. Extrude this thing. Let me see now. Maybe a 200. And symmetric. There we are. So we have a surface. Now, I want to draw two curves on this surface. Okay, so let me go ahead and do that. First of all, where's the XY plane that's hiding? Right there. The easiest for me to draw the curves over here and project it. So let's say that curve on that plane, I will sketch something, maybe another 3-point arc like that. Exit and project it. Project that on this. So there we are. I'll do another one. Okay, so maybe another curve on that, another curve on this, and sketch on it. Or I make a straight line, something like this. Exit and project. Okay, so basically I have two curves. Both of these curves are on that surface. Okay, they're not lines. Let me hide these things. Hide, and also hide this plane. Hide all the planes here. Now what I want to do is create maybe 3 points. 3 points on the surface. We know how to do that. Point on a surface. Here is 1 point. Another one. Instead of being randomly in space, they are on this plane, on the surface. Let's do one more, maybe somewhere here. Okay, good. All right, now we go to spline. Okay. For my first point, for example, I select this one. For my second point, I select this one. Third point, that one. Fourth point, this one. And we can close it or we can go back there. Now notice that these things are not necessarily, these are actually this spline is not necessarily on that surface. The points are, but the spline is not. However, there is this says geometry or support. If I select that surface, now they're all going to be on that surface. It's rather unfortunate because of my surface is so nice and smooth that you get the impression that that spline that I drew here is actually on that surface. It is not. It may not be. Okay. And remember, if this was a flat surface, a plane, of course it's going to be, the spline is going to be in that plane. But this is so close to a flat one that you may get the impression that it is actually sitting in that surface, and it's not. But by selecting this geometry and support, it'll make sure that it lies. It's a projection essentially of that. Now, what if I wanted to make this tangent to that? It's the same story as before. Instead of saying explicit, from a curve, from what curve? From this curve. And if necessary, you flip the direction. Right now, if I do that like that, that's not the way I want it. So let's go back here, flip that direction. Now it's going to be good. If I want this thing to be tangent to that, double click. This was the last one. Instead of explicit, from a curve, from which curve? From this curve, and flip the direction. There we are. Once again, please don't get the impression that without selecting this checkbox, the resulting spline is necessarily on that surface, even though the points are on that surface, but the resulting spline can be in space depending on the curvature of this. Okay. Now, one other thing that I can do is you can adjust the tension here, which I didn't mention it when I was doing the first part. Look at this. Now I can adjust the tension. You can see at some point, of course, it's going to go nuts. Let me repeat this thing because I don't like the way this thing came out to be. So let me go ahead and do another example. So let me delete all of these. Delete everything. Okay. Let me just bring these this vertical thing into the show mode. Okay. So on that plane, I will sketch. This time I'm not going to do a 3-point arc on purpose. I'm going to do a spline like that. This is in the sketcher. It's not in space. And then I'm going to extrude it. Let's do that. 100. Double. Okay, in both direction. So there's so much curvature here that you will see that very easily. So let me also, I want two curves here, right? So let me get the XY plane. All right. On it, I draw maybe a line like that. Exit and project it. There we are. And let me do on that same plane, that horizontal plane, something weird, a weird curve. Last time I did 3-point arc. Why don't I do a spline? Okay. Exit and project it. Project this on that surface. Okay, and now I'm going to hide these guys just like I did last time. This is to convince you that that spline that I had is not necessarily in that surface. So let me hide. Good. I need 3 points. Remember that? I'll make it 4 points. I don't know. So we go on a surface, maybe this surface, 1 point like that. Another one over there. Another one over here. And I'll make one more. How about there? Oops. Come on. Okay, good. Cancel. Now we're going to do our spline. Spline. This is in space now. Let's start. That point, this point, this point, this point, that one, and that one. And let's say okay. You see that spline is not in space. You can see that right there. But if you go to spline and say geometry and support, and you select the support, which is that surface, and now look at it. Everything is in that spline, is in that surface. And you can do the same thing that we did before, double click on it. For example, if you want these things to be tangent, move these things out of the way. Okay, if you want this thing to be tangent to that, this was the last one, explicit from a curve. There's my curve. And the direction, flip it so that it becomes tangent. Beautiful. And the same thing over there. And you can change the tension. You can easily see the tension here. When I change it, this junction will actually deform. You can see that. You see this? You see that? Of course, at some point it's going to go crazy. You may go crazy. Yeah. But anyway, that's what it is. Good luck.